Demand.
All right, there is plenty to fire up about this evening. Lots of things to talk about, including the red shirt probe. Should the police be reopening it in Victoria? Let me explain. Now, you remember the red shirt scenario where people who worked in electorate offices for Labor MPs were all also going out and doing party political work. This was something that the Ombudsman said was a huge problem. It was something that the Victorian government spent a huge amount of money trying to pause that investigation, and Labor MPs refused to take part in an investigation with Victoria Police about the clear and obvious misuse of money. But after Adam Somyurek went to IBAC this week and said this...
Corruption was your word to describe the Red Shirts affair, wasn't it?
Yes, but I was referring to something. Let me tell you what I was referring to. I was referring to 25 MPs getting telephone calls saying, we have allocated you staff members, and now I want you to sign timesheets 8 months in advance saying that these electoral officers have worked those hours. And by the way, your electoral officers are not going to sit with you. They're going to sit in another campaigning office, and they're going to be directed by John Linda's staff member. 25 of that. So that's pretty extreme.
Now, after all of that, Daniel Andrews, of course, said, no, couldn't possibly comment here. And how's this? Martin Pakula, who is a Labor minister, well, he is seemingly obviously saying that even if police want to look into this again after somebody is now blowing the whistle about the apparent knowledge of the rorting nature of all of this, he wouldn't cooperate again. That's at least what I read into this. Have a look.
Been investigated more often than the Kennedy assassination, which, I mean, there's been, as I recall, 2 police inquiries, an Ombudsman's inquiry, a Department of Parliamentary Services inquiry and a Parliamentary Upper House inquiry. So the opposition's entitled to call for whatever they want, and I'm not one to give advice to Victoria Police.
Well, the opposition does think there's something a little more here, and Brad Batten is the Victoria Shadow Police Minister, and of course part of the Liberal Party. He joins us now to talk about it. Brad, let's talk brass tacks here, where they are openly now starting to give the middle finger towards the process. They say nothing to see here. But if people weren't cooperating when people were investigating, that's why there might be the nothing to see here.
Yeah, that's correct, Paul. We've seen this for a long period of time, and we've spoken about what's happened with the Red Shirts affairs for a long time. And hearing Martin Pakula say that basically they wouldn't cooperate again, that's exactly what they've said in the past, where they've actually been asked to be interviewed and they've refused those interviews. Daniel Andrews loves to get in front of the cameras and say, I take full responsibility for everything under the government I lead. And he usually follows it up with, we will cooperate with any investigation. And Martin Pakula mentioned there was an Ombudsman's investigation. The government spent $1 million to try and stop it.
Exactly.
They have continued.
Yeah, I mean, this is what is always very clever, right? Because, again, look, 99.9% of people busy have other things to do, right? They don't follow the little granulars, right? It's when you have a particular journalist like, a Shari Markson following in Wuhan or a Kate McClymont following in on Eddie Obeid, you need somebody relentlessly following the trails here on top of all of the political questions around it. But because there is so much churn, because it is so long, in inverted commas, ago, that there's not sort of the carriage of people to talk about this. But have a look at what Daniel Andrews had to say today, and I want to get your reaction. Roll this tape.
I'm not here to run a commentary on any testimony that's been led, any evidence that's been led, any comments from any witnesses. To do so, I think, is totally inappropriate, and therefore I'm not going to do that. I understand why you asked the question, but I'll just ask you respectfully, please understand why I just can't answer those questions and I can't go to those issues.
What BS, Brad?
It sounds like, I bet you it's the same response he gave to Mr Ashton when he was asked to be interviewed. Oh, I'm sorry, I understand you're the Chief Commissioner of Police, but I can't be interviewed. I'm very important. And it's about time this government realises, and particularly Daniel Andrews, you're not above the law. I don't care who you are, and I don't care if it's Liberal or Labor. Anyone in these circumstances, and there's further evidence now, Adam Somyurek not only came out and said that they had been effectively using this as a gold standard rort of the system and taking taxpayers' money, he also came out and said it was $500 million. That's $122,000 more than the Victorian Labor Party paid back for already admitting what the error was. Now, Paul, I'm going to take a guess. I'm not sure. I'd have had a speeding fine in my time, and I'm assuming you may have as well. By paying the speeding fine, that's the admission of guilt.
Correct.
This government paid back $388,000 and want the Victorian community to believe that they knew nothing about it. It's just wrong. We use the word it stinks, but it's just a disgrace the way they've treated the Victorian community. Shane Patton has a real opportunity. He wasn't the Chief Commissioner at the time this all happened. He wasn't attached into the government the way the former Chief Commissioner may have been when this was going through. He can open this investigation. He can ensure that those allegations are put to the Premier and the ministers and force them in a position where they have to answer those questions. Give them the opportunity to make a no-comment interview if they'd prefer. That's up to them. But make sure the allegations are put to them like every other person in Victoria or senior person in a business if they'd stolen money from a company.
But also, again, the very clever little smoke trick. No, this matter's being investigated. I couldn't possibly talk about it. That's what you say when there's an active criminal trial that's happening and you might affect the jury. Right? Nothing you say outside of the IBAC room will affect what is happening in IBAC. But because it looks like a court and it sounds like a court, people think that it's a court. Yet again, sorry to say it, I'll say it, you won't. You shouldn't. The media shouldn't let him get away with that. The media should say, hang on, mate, this isn't a trial. That's not a good enough answer. Instead, because they just go, it looks like a court, so he couldn't possibly say anything. There's no jury. There's no judge. Why exactly can't he comment?
And I don't know if anyone's realised yet, but they're not investigating Red Shirts rorts, so he can comment as much as he likes.
Exactly.
But I know you say media have the right, the opportunity and should be processing some of these questions and asking harder. And yes, that's your prerogative to say that. I say Victoria Police, on the last occasion, didn't ask those questions and now have an opportunity to reopen that investigation. There is no reason. No rhyme or reason. And as people know, I'm an ex-former Victoria Police officer. I wasn't a detective, but I understood the system. And if someone stole something, you brought them in, you'd arrest them if you had to. Some people you invited in for interview, you'd sit through the process of doing that interview, put the allegations to them, let them make a no comment. Why isn't the Andrews government cooperating with the Victoria Police? And we all know why. Look, we don't even need to pretend around this. We know why. They spent $1 million to stop the investigation by the Ombudsman for a reason. Because not only does it politically look bad, it actually is bad, the actions that they've taken as a government.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Brad. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brad. Again, just these little tricks.